Welcome. We're here today with Mr. Fred Karlin. He is an award-winning composer, and welcome. It's nice to see you again.
Hello, Catherine. It's good to see you.
Tell us a little bit more about your background in composing and all your achievements and awards and things like that.
Well, as a teenager, I discovered jazz, and I discovered it through the playing of one of the great legendary trumpet players, Harry James. And I was about 13 or something like that at the time, and I just had to do it. I was so moved. I heard his playing in a movie called The Young Man with the Horn with Kirk Douglas, and I just got so excited about it. I asked my folks if they'd get me a trumpet, which they did, and I just never stopped practicing and playing, and I began to try to play jazz right away. And so for the next 6 or 7 years, that was my musical realm. I just kept improving in that area as a player and also as a writer simultaneously, as a composer, arranger. And from there, at some point, after I met my future wife, Meg Karlin, she had a jazz chamber quintet that not only had 5 jazz musicians in it, but they also were classical musicians. And the music she had designed for us was, much of it was adapted from medieval music, the Middle Ages.
How beautiful.
We did one piece that she found that I adapted that was based on the Dance of Death, which was indicative of the Black Plague problems at that time, and many beautiful romantic pieces from the Jacobean and Renaissance era, and American folk music as well.
What year was that?
Well, that was about 1962.
Okay, great year.
And it was, and we got a contract with Columbia Records and did really three LPs with them. And during that time, I found my musical interest just expanding tremendously, and then into American historical music. And what was wonderful about that experience, there were 2 things. One, I met my future wife, and we just celebrated our 37th.
Congratulations.
And it's been fantastic. And in addition to that, my whole realm of musical interest expanded. And this was very key for me because in order to be involved as a film composer, you really need, as a rule, to have a very broad musical background and an eclectic craft so that you can do almost any kind of music. And sometimes in one given film, you may do 3 or 4 different kinds of music in order to make the score proper. And through that process, and scoring some commercials, which were demanding in terms of the technique and the ability to learn the technical language, I discovered that I love this.
Right.
This is something that I can do very well. And my growing eclectic interest in all kinds of music, folk and classical and jazz and so on, suddenly had a focus and a purpose, because film can ask different parts of your musical interest with every film. And so I really became very excited and very single-minded about it. I decided this is perfect for me. I love doing it, and somehow or other I'm going to do it, because I wasn't yet. It was just an idea.
So since then, you've scored at least 150, something like that?
Probably 150 different projects, including television films and an occasional series that I did in the 70s, and all the episodes and a number of features.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was a lot of work.
And you've won the Oscar?
I was very lucky to receive an Oscar for the music for a song I wrote from the picture Lovers and Other Strangers in 1971, with very nice lyrics by Rob Royer and James Griffin. And they were 2 of the 4 members of the original group called Bread, which was a very successful soft rock group right at that time. And the song was popularized by the Carpenters, who were perhaps the biggest of all the soft rock groups then.
Oh, that's amazing.
And her voice was terrific and perfect for the song. So I was very fortunate with that. And then I had the same good fortune a few years later when I was asked to score the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman. And that became a landmark television event.
It was, I remember I saw that.
Yeah, it was
quite
a landmark.
Extraordinary.
People were setting their alarm watches so that they could get home in time for it. And not having seen it, there was just so much good advance buzz on it.
Is that the one you won the Emmy for?
I won an Emmy for that.
Oh, that was
These
beautiful.
things are very fortunate. When I got that opportunity, I remember sitting in the screening room when I saw the rough cut, unscored and not quite completed, but close, and I'd been asked to score it. And the screen starts out black, just black, no images, and then you hear it off screen through this, just the black on the screen before titles or anything, little voices singing Happy Birthday.
Oh.
And they were singing, of course, to this 100-year-old ex-slave Jane Pittman,
Incredible
And
story.
I cried. And there was nothing, you couldn't, there was no image. But it just was, there was some quality in that film all the way through that was so real. And I felt, I must say, like I was made for it.
Yeah.
It was all my interests and backgrounds and my interest in American historical music and folk music and Civil War music. I had embraced all that over the past 5 years before then, and learned about it, recreated it.
So when you were first starting out and how much you have accomplished and achieved, does it surpass your expectations of it?
Well, I had no expectations.
Really?
My expectation was, I love this, I want to do this. And so, in a way, I suppose, the first job surpassed, my expectation was, how could I start to work in this field? But when you get busy in your chosen field, then you begin to see what else you might want to do that would be of value to the society, that springs from the gifts that you have and the interests that you have in that field. And so that has moved me forward as well. So I found myself co-writing with a dear friend of mine, Rayburn Wright, a comprehensive, and it became a definitive textbook on film scoring. It's used all over the world. And then a second book after that called Listening to Movies, which is a general interest book for anybody who enjoys watching films and would like to know more about the music. And I never would have thought I would have done that, but it's evolved very naturally. And I created the ASCAP Fred Carlin film scoring workshop, and created it and taught it for 9 years. And that also came out of my textbook work and my desire to take the mystery really out of what it is that we do. I still have that desire in my books these days.
Right. What was your first big break that you got?
The first big one actually precedes film music. And I would say it was when I got a call from Benny Goodman. And that had come through a mutual friend of ours, actually his brother-in-law, who was the legendary John Hammond, the talent scout who discovered Benny and discovered Billie Holiday and later discovered Bob Dylan and Bruce Springsteen.
All
He
these
was
great
quite
people.
a guy, John Hammond. And he was at Columbia at that time in those years. And he had recommended me to Benny. And remember, my background at that time was jazz, so getting a call from the king of swing, this is a
Right.
great thing, even though
Right.
my jazz interests were much wider than what Benny Goodman played. I still loved that. And I would say that was a very big break. And it didn't lead to any film music, but it buoyed me up quite a bit. It was a great opportunity. I wrote for his tentet for over a year.
Great.
And
And that just opened the door to...
it didn't. No, it didn't.
Didn't?
No, it wasn't a path. It was only a path for me spiritually and psychologically
Right.
and emotionally. It meant a great deal. Definitely was a big break. And then I think, sometimes the things that are really big breaks aren't high profile. And I was just realizing recently that there was a good friend of ours, the late Milt Kamen. He was a stand-up comedian and had started to become an actor here when he died years ago. But when we were both in New York, he decided that I should score his 12-minute silent movie that he was producing with a friend of his there. Silent movie, 12-minute movie, 12 minutes of music. I mean, that's all, it was a big, very demanding job where they count on the music to carry the film along. And it was a cast of one. It was called The Last Man, and Milt was the last man, so there were no other people and no dialogue because it was silent. And that was his faith in me at that time was an enormous break. And,
Right.
and not even just the faith, but the fact that it gave me my first opportunity to score any kind of film, which I hadn't done. And that was a real month of self-discovery. And these kinds of breaks are the things that I mean, if you look down life's path now and you consider where that took me,
Right.
that had tremendous ramifications for my future because it set my focus.
Right.
I said, this is what I want.
So you've worked with so many great people over the years. Was it Come Saturday Morning? Was that with Liza Minnelli?
She was in it, and it really was her first high-profile work. Yeah, it was a year or two before Cabaret, which really brought her international attention. She won the Oscar for that. But she was nominated for her work on The Sterile Cuckoo. and which Come Saturday Morning was written for, and did a wonderful job of that. And that was another song that became very popular and was sung by the Sandpipers, who were also very big in that period of time.
Right.
And on that film, that's another break. This is why, you know, when people think of breaks, they sometimes think of being hired for something that becomes a big hit, but sometimes it's much less tangible than that. The break there was that the director, Alan Pakula, his first directorial job, although he had co-produced with the Robert Mulligan To Kill a Mockingbird and other wonderful films in the decade before, he decided that there were spots in the film that would simply have music and probably a song. That's a big break. It was the same with Lovers and Other Strangers. There was a spot right in the middle where for 2 minutes, or 2.5 minutes, the director, it was the wedding scene that was pivotal in that film, where he decided early on he would put a song there.
Right.
Well, that if you're a songwriter and doing the score, that's a fantastic break. You can't have a song that's going to surface. Certainly back then you couldn't,
It was made
unless
for you.
it had some kind of a setting that was appropriate in the film. And both of those films not only allowed for it with space, but counted on it.
Right.
So there's a lot of faith involved, and then there's faith in you personally involved, because you're the one who is expected to bring that to life.
Exactly.
And the reality is that these are incredible breaks.
Right. Yeah. So let's talk about the extraordinary benefit concert, One World of Peace Through Music.
Oh, sure.
How did you come to get involved with the concert?
Well, a mutual friend of many of the organizers in Master Suma Qinghai's group and mine asked me whether I would be interested, because they were mounting this concert, which incidentally did turn out to be extraordinary. It was a wonderful experience. And they wanted somebody who had film music background to set a number of Master's poems. And the more I thought about it, the more excited I got about this as a musical opportunity for me. And that turned out to be absolutely true. It was a break for me in other ways. In terms of my psyche, it was very good for me. I had a wonderful 8 months really working on it. And with a film, you know, you work maybe 3 to 5 weeks, and it's gone.
Right.
And here I really got to live with this and to consider every aspect of it, and to pretty much make my own decisions about how it might best be presented and so on.
Right.
So that's how I got asked to do it. And then I became extremely pleased and excited to have been asked.
So now they gave you a poem, some of Master's poetry. How did the Peace Seeker come about?
Well, the first thing that I did on the project was to get a large notebook or two filled with Master's poems, and they were all beautiful. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that if this piece was to be 20, 30, 40 minutes, as it finally turned out to be long, and to set at least 5 of her poems to songs during the course of that time, that I wanted the piece to have some focus. She wrote about many different things, and I subsequently got a second notebook filled with poems. And the subject matter of many of her poems was lovely, but I felt maybe not as universal as she herself would want it to be for such a project. Many of them were concerned with unrequited love, and they were very personal, and they were very touching. But I wasn't sure that those kinds of subjects would be as universal as we would all want this to be for such a concert. When I got the second notebook of poems, the poem that leaped out at me was a longer work called Silent Tears. And in that work, if you'll forgive me for doing this, I really, because we're talking about her poetry and it's so wonderful, and also it had such a bearing on the concert and on my piece, just to read a few lines from one of the poems within Silent Tears. This is the first thing you hear in my piece. You hear an actor come on stage and he says, "Once upon a time, a true peace lover wandered around the many worlds in search of eternal happiness. She walked over the face of the earth, the suns, the moons, and the clouds. at last she found that it was all the while hidden in her very heart. And I thought right away, oh, well, this is wonderful, because there's a major theme here. You know, what we're all looking for is right there inside us. And then I realized many of her poems talked in very strong metaphorical language about a person trying to reach their inner self, and how difficult it is, and how the door is shut. And sometimes she would talk on a very personal level, the way the Southern Baptists do when they talk to Jesus. And I got a letter from Jesus. It's all very personal. This was the same thing, but about Buddhism. And it could have been any religion, actually, because she's not specific, as I recall, but it is about the higher being.
Right.
And it's about how difficult it is to make a connection with that higher being. And how frustrating it is that you just want to go, I can't stand this anymore, I'm going to lose my faith. And then you don't, you know, the next day, it's like practicing the trumpet, you know, you miss the high note and you say, oh, that's it, you know, I'm finished. But the next day, of course, you reflect on it and you try again, you know, and you keep working at it until you make the breakthrough. So I saw tremendous potential in that. And then later on in the same poem, the actor says, her tears were then rolling down. She finds, incidentally, in the middle part of the poem, that just as she found her inner happiness, she saw everybody else suffering down below her as she looked down. And the poem says, her tears were then rolling down, 1 drop, 2 drops, and many more. Each drop became a shining jewel, and soon the firmament was studded with glittering tears, which are the stars today. And as soon as I read that, I thought, 1 drop, 2 drops. And that's what I have the boys' choir singing. Those are their first words. 1 drop, 2 drops. And that became a very key element in my text, and particularly in my orientation toward what this was about. And so with that frame of reference, then I was able to go through her poems and find some quatrains and other short excerpts or poems for the actor and 2 actresses to read here and there.
Right.
Accompanied by the orchestra in the flow of this piece, and then 5 lyrics which I could adapt as songs, and that's what I did. And through the poems and the lyrics, they describe this frustration with finding the inner self and the supreme being, and also how sad it can make the narrator, who becomes the actors and the vocalist who sings these things, when they realize how much suffering there is and how difficult it is.
Right.
For people and to reach people even.
Yes.
And the singer, through one of Supreme Master Ching Hai's poems, says, what can I do for the world? What can I do for my people? What can I do for the world always full of troubles, always full of sorrow?
What can I do for the world? What can I do for my people? What can I do for the world? Always full of troubles, always full of sorrow.
And there are moments when we all feel helpless to do anything
Right.
for humanity. And then there are moments when we have a breakthrough. And I was pleased to be able to show that it's not easy, and that connections, this whole piece is about connections. There's loss of connections, and the yearning for connections of loved ones and family. There's the feeling of isolation when you feel this way. And if you ever have felt this way, you know you can feel completely alone.
Right.
And all that's expressed in this. And then there's the desire to connect with your inner self,
Right.
which goes back to the first lines, and how difficult that is, but how important it is for us individually, and then as a collective one world.
Exactly.
So that's what it was all about, and I found I was able to put these wonderful poems into a context that would make that statement.